got the mechanical voice. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me here. This is pretty fun. I haven't talked to a group from Wayne State in a long time, and actually it's been quite a while since I actually visited the university. I used to go down to the university quite a bit back in the old days for all sorts of things. I grew up around Detroit, and so I'm a Detroiter, and if you're from Detroit, you definitely spend more than your fair share of time around Wayne if you're into technology and academics and these sorts of things. And so I really appreciate having the opportunity here to speak to you guys. Um, my name is Mitch Rohde. I'm the CEO here at a small company called Quantum Signal AI, which is located in Saline, Michigan, which is just south of Ann Arbor. So there's no reason anyone here would know Saline, but I assume you know Ann Arbor. So we're about 3 miles south of there. And I thought today I'd talk to you guys just a little bit about the kind of things that we do here. As Kelly was telling me, you guys are STEAM technologists and working on all sorts of cool things. And so I thought it'd be kind of fun to just share what we do at Quantum and just be casual about it. If you guys want to interrupt at any time and ask me questions, feel free, or we can do any sort of questions at the end. It's all good. I'm not, as you can tell, I'm a kind of an informal guy, so it's all good. I thought I would start out by talking a little bit about the origins of the company, because every company's got a story and ours is no exception. My background, the company origins kind of start with my origins. My background is in biomedical and electrical engineering. I grew up building a lot of robots and being interested in things like simulation and neural implants and signal processing and all sorts of these things that kind of I do today, and we'll talk about. But these were things that I started when I was probably 9 or 10 years old building, and really enjoyed it. I picked up a bunch of degrees here at in Ann Arbor from 1990 to 2000. So compared to you guys, I'm an old man. So what can you do? Everybody gets old, and that was good stuff. I did some internships at General Motors when I was an undergrad, and I also did a internship for a prof in a lab working on some test equipment. That was pretty cool. And I also had the honor of knowing some pretty super smart guys over my time. And three of the guys I would say over there on the right hand side, which is Professor Bill Williams, who's now passed on. He was a very famous guy in the signal processing space and time frequency analysis. He co-founded Quantum. Rob Lupa, who's there with, you could see that little embarrassing picture of me is probably like when I was about 15 with Rob, and Rob is now my chief technology officer here at Quantum, and we work together every day. We've been working together for about 40 years on projects, so pretty good. And then Gene Zalubis down in the lower right, who's an engineer who actually works at GM now, but he was also one of the starting points for Quantum. But knowing a lot of super smart folks, guys, gals, etc., is not a bad thing when you're trying to start a company, and helps a lot. When I was a student, like a grad student, I really didn't quite know what I wanted to do for a career path. Like I started out thinking I was going to become a professor. Some of you guys might be looking at academics and stuff. It seemed like a good thing for a while, and then I changed my mind for various reasons, and I could tell you guys the stories on that, after the recording shuts off. But I thought about getting a job in a company, like a big company, a small company, wasn't sure. I thought, well, maybe start a business. And this was about 1999. So I don't know if you guys remember 1999, but that was kind of the .com era when all sorts of companies were starting. It was a couple of years after Mozilla and Netscape became a huge thing. And so it was kind of a good time to start a company. I started Quantum instead of going and getting a real job. It's like I'm always trying to avoid a real job. I started Quantum with 3 major motivations. One being to work with smart people that I can respect. And I know you guys have probably worked in teams in your classrooms with people where, some team members are awesome and pull their weight and do a great job. And other team members are just folks that like you would just never, ever do another project with. And so I really wanted to work with those people that pull their weight and that I can learn from, and that they're basically people that are smarter than me. So every day I can really learn some stuff, and that's great. I also want to work on hard problems that make a difference, because there's this whole notion of you can work on things that really don't go anywhere. You can work on things that don't make a difference. But I think if we're all into engineers and computers and things, people generally go into these fields because they want to do something good and they want to create something that makes a difference. And so that was one of the key founding issues or motivations of Quantum. And then the third one, which I say, and people think I'm joking when I say this, but it's no BS, is that never wanting to dress up. And I am, as you can tell, like this is like wearing a shirt with a collar is like a huge step up for me today. Like literally everything in my wardrobe is t-shirts and jeans. And if I got to put on a suit, it's just a scary, scary day. And my staff gets like super scared when they see me in a suit. They think something bad's happening. But I always like to point out when I'm speaking to folks that are like thinking about what they're going to do with their future, start a company, is like, what isn't on that motivation list? And really what isn't? Does anyone on the call, anyone can tell me what isn't on that motivation list that sticks out?
Money.
Exactly, money. And I think that there's far too many people that go in to start businesses because they're like, we got to get rich and on these sorts of things. And it's really, that is not a good motivator to start a business. And that will almost always certainly lead you down paths and decisions that you will probably not be happy with in the end. So nobody that I know, and I know a lot of people that have started some really, really big companies that that you've heard of and use every day, and none of them started the company with the motivation of making money. And that just comes with it once you're doing good. And so that's a good thing. I'll talk here about what quantum signal does, but what we started out is I like to say we were AI before AI was cool. So you guys have heard of AI, and you probably know, since you guys are computer folks, that AI is nothing more than like math implemented as algorithms and hardware and software. And so you're using algorithms to mine noisy data of any type, whether it be audio recordings or video or still images or vibration signals or whatever. You're mining data for useful information using mathematical algorithms. AI comes from a lot of different places. Traditionally, it came from something like these AI frameworks. If you were a computer scientist, there are things like SOAR was an AI framework, and that was a very academic thing. You would program in languages like Lisp, and these were like AI back in like the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. AI also kind of evolved out of the current version of AI out of signal and image processing, so which is more of an electro engineering statistics kind of area. And so if you're in a double E or signal processing kind of thing, you know what I'm talking about. And then things like study and simulation of nervous systems. So you guys have all heard of deep learning and machine learning and all these things, and artificial neural networks. That's all about, it all came out of studies of emulating neurophysiology and neural networks. And so the modern interpretation of AI is kind of a broad term for this mishmash of all these algorithms that come together into one. In 1999, I got to be honest, folks, there was a lot of AI kind of buried in systems. Like we all had DVD players, right? And we all had all sorts of stuff, but very few people knew what I was talking about when I would talk about algorithms. I would go to like kind of pitch the company and say, hey, we specialize in developing algorithms in AI. They'd be like, don't get it. No, what that's for. You're like, you can discover interesting things in your data. And people would just kind of shake their heads like, oh, I don't know. That sounds kind of, I don't know, we want to pay money for that, which is like unbelievable, right? To you guys, I'm sure. And it's unbelievable to me when you think about how far we've come 20 years later, where there are massive companies, multi-billion-dollar companies that are based strictly on data mining. And there's entire fields that have blown up like data science that are effectively offshoots of this whole notion. So, when I go out and try to sell this thing and people would say I was crazy, I was always like, one day we'll have it. And now, right, I guess I was right. Here we are. So what does quantum signal AI actually do? It sounds all good. We're about 50 people. And like I said, in Saline, we're headquartered in an old high school. We're effectively an engineering research and development company. We started out as a signal and image processing consulting company and then went through a bunch of iterations, which I'll just talk about here in a second. But we are currently we were an independent company for about 20 years doing work for all sorts of different customers, defense contracts, commercial contracts. We work for Sony and Raytheon and GM and Ford and the Secret Service and the Homeland Security and on and on and on. We worked for all sorts of folks and did all sorts of projects. But then in July of 2019, Ford Autonomous Vehicles LLC came to us and said, we like all the things you're working on. Can you join the company? And that's what we did. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But what do we do actually here? We are this engineering R&D company that has software developers and hardware developers and algorithm developers and system developers, and we develop solutions to support people's projects and various goals. And so the things that we specialize in are things like robotics and autonomy, modeling and simulation, doing mechatronics, image signal processing, software development. We even have a digital art and assets team that develops models for virtual simulations. But notionally we work across all these areas, and it seems like a lot of areas to work across for 50 people, but having folks that can work on all the stuff and working all together in one building makes a huge difference. And we've been able to put together projects and solutions that companies that are 10 times our size were never able to do. I'll show you some examples here in a minute, but my team is really focused on hard problems. So they're really not, if I give them something like boring or simple, even though it like keeps them busy, they're not very interested. They're much more interested in doing hard stuff, which I'm sure, you guys, I mean, the sacred few that have shown up here tonight for this kind of meeting on a Wednesday night, I'm almost damn sure that all of you are the kind of folks that are interested in technology and are interested in hard problems. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here, which is cool. When I talk about the company evolution, I say we went through different phases. So we had a phase where we were doing, when we first started, was consulting. And I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember something called Arthur Andersen. It was a giant consulting firm that did like business management consulting, where they would come in and do, tremendous high level consulting for all these big companies, charge a ton of money. They were huge. And then it kind of got sold and renamed and blah, blah, blah. And so around that time, we thought, well, we'll do consulting, but in signal and image processing development, because a lot of people don't understand it. It'll be great. And we did some good projects, but I got to be honest, it was a pretty big struggle. There were only a couple of us, and trying to get paying jobs was hard. And so, when you think about starting a company, this is an aside to you guys, think about starting a company, don't ever assume that like your first 3 months, all of a sudden you're going to be rolling in the dough and things are going to be hunky dory, because often you got to hang in there for way longer than you think. And in my case, I hung in there for about 2 years before I really got a real paycheck. And for, I don't know about you guys, 2 years is a long time to not get a real paycheck. And so fortunately I was married, and my wife was able to help me with my support and stuff. And I had some money saved up, and it was all good, but it was a struggle. We went into about 2002, we were struggling, and at the same time working on biometrics algorithms, face recognition and speaker verification. And we applied to the government for a big grant, and we got like the first government contract we ever got, and the biggest one we got at the time, and that was about $2 million to work on biometrics. And so we worked on that for about 3 years. It was great, but the biometrics technology was not doing great, and it was okay, but it really wasn't enough to be able to it really wasn't enough to be able to put in the marketplace. So it was like a product that wasn't good enough to really for someone to pay for. So we kind of were struggling, and we realized we had single major customer, which was the government. And that's never good when you have a company. So in about 05, 06, I started to like really hustle my butt and get us out there in various things and get us hooked up a lot of customers in robotics and kind of video game style simulation for engineering applications, and doing some video gaming work. We started a video game division called Reactor Zero, and we just started grow. And so from 06 to 15, we kept growing our staff, growing our projects, little by little. So some projects were $25,000 projects, some projects were $500,000 projects, some projects were $1 million projects. But in every case, we were contracted to develop something and deliver something on the engineering side that our customer wanted. And it was a lot of fun. From about 2016 through 2019, we realized that all of our work across all these different things was a little bit diffuse. And I'll be honest with you guys, like I would go to like see my in-laws or my family, my other family members, where they'd be like, so what do you do again? Like, I run a company, we do engineering development, we do software and hardware and stuff. And they'd be like, yeah, I don't really get it. It's like, it's algorithms. Yeah, I don't get it. And so, not saying that my family's dumb, just saying that it's something that was a little bit like, we work with these guys, we work with those guys. How do you pitch a company, or how do you describe a company that on one hand is developing forensic stuff for the Secret Service, on the other hand is doing mobile robotic stuff for the Army, is on the other hand doing video game work? It doesn't really all fit together as well as you'd hope. And so from 16 to 19, we kind of started to hone our business and focus and start to develop core products and services. And that's when Ford got a hold of us and said, hey, we love what you do in simulation. We love what you do in robotics and autonomy. We love what you guys do just across the board. Would you like to join Ford? And we said, absolutely. And at that time, going from the humble beginnings in 1999, where we had like one customer or 0 customers or whatever, all the way to at that point where we had, all these different companies and organizations that really wanted our time and our business, it was a big decision to make whether or not to join the big company. But when we looked at it, we saw Ford had a worldwide reach. It is a well-established company with a great reputation, and they could really leverage what we have. And so the more stuff we could build, the more stuff that they can put into their products and get it out there. And I think as an engineer, like I said earlier, you're not building stuff just because you want to see it sit on the shelf. You're building stuff because you want to see it get out there in the field, which is pretty, that's what we all dream of. And so, the big decision was to join Ford or not. And we joined Ford and we took the leap, and now it's 2.5 years, and it's been really, really good since then. See if this thing will advance. Come on. There we go. So I don't know if you guys can see these videos or not, but just a little bit about our image processing expertise. Back in those days, in the earlier days, we were doing everything from tracking vehicles to tracking pedestrians, to tracking and identifying faces, to even on the lower right, if you can see it, that's a Joan Jett video with some models. And we had a project where we were supposed to track certain pieces of clothing and insert links. And so when people would see these videos and they liked the clothing, they could click on that clothing and it would take them to a place to buy it, which is, something that was our client was really, really interested in. This is like, oh man, like 15 years ago now, so a long time ago. But we did all these kind of algorithm development and then real-time software implementations and deliveries for robotics, for automotive, for security, for all these different things. I mean, pretty much anyone who was paying that was, on the up and up and it had a legitimate application, we were willing to work with. And so we ended up in a lot of crazy projects over time. And my days were full of just craziness and projects. And so one of the better projects we worked on, and one that I like to call out, is from 2007 to 2010, we did something for the US Army that was about road sign reading. And so nowadays you guys are getting into cars, right? And they've got cameras all over the place, facing outward, doing this, doing that. Back in those days, there was very little of that. Though cameras were cheap and easy to come by, there wasn't that much in terms of processing out there for it. And in this case, what the Army wanted to do was be able to read road signs and then relate what they saw on those road signs to a priori GIS information and be able to estimate on a map where you are. Now, why does the military want to do that? Well, when they're driving in cities or places where GPS drops out, they don't want to get lost, because sometimes if you get lost, you get in a dangerous situation. So they want to be able to read road signs automatically and see on a map roughly where they were. And so that's what we built. But at the same time, when we built that sign reading with it, we also did things like lane detection and departure warning. We did tracking other cars. We did a vision-based speedometer. We did, if you see that little red number underneath the car in front of it, that's called a headway measurement. We did a headway measurements. And so these are all the primitives for a monocular camera-based vision system for a car. And at the time, it worked perfectly. We were running it on a laptop under a Java implementation. It was great algorithms. We hooked up to a mono camera on a dashboard, throw it in a car, show all this off, and it was fancy stuff. But we would go into some of the Army loved it, but we'd go into the auto industry, to tier ones and some of the bigger automakers, and say, hey, look at this. We could put this in cars. You could do cool stuff. And we kind of got head shakes. They're like, we don't see why you would want this. Like, why would someone want any of this vision stuff? And we're like, well, there's going to be a lot of cool things coming down the pike, but we got nothing. And in fact, one of the auto suppliers in about 2011 or 12 looked at me and said, we don't ever see cameras going into cars beyond just a backup camera. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to see more cameras in cars coming up, because at the time we were starting to do autonomy work with all sorts of army folks, right? And the DARPA grand challenges had come and gone and everything. And so it was a little bit of a weird thing, but we could never quite get someone to adopt this thing. And at the time, there was this little competitor that was doing stuff that was venture capital backed in Israel called Mobileye. And instead of going the route that they did, which took a lot of investment to go build up their capability, we just moved on to other projects that we had going on. We're like, okay, no one's going to license it. Forget it. We'll just move on and do other things. And of course, years later, all sorts of suppliers started to come to us and say, do you still have that? Can we still work on that? And all this kind of stuff. And so, it's funny that 5 or 10 or 15 years later, people are still coming to us and talking to us and saying, what about that sign reading stuff you guys did? And it just goes to show, you can do things that are fantastic, but sometimes they're a little bit ahead of their time, and timing is everything on all these things. And so, we did great work there, but we certainly didn't get wealthy or anything like that off it. But I'm still proud of that project. That project was quite amazing. And that was in terms of, like, you guys are computing guys, like I said, that was literally implemented in Java on a commodity laptop we bought down at Best Buy. And the reason you could do that was because if you have the right algorithms, if it's really a good implementation of a good algorithm design, good math, you don't need a tremendous amount of computing power. So all these dudes, you guys can quote me on this, all these dudes that want to throw supercomputers in the trunk of these cars to do everything. Yeah, there's a lot of computing needed, yeah, it's not always really needed for everything. If you did better with the algorithms, you probably wouldn't need so much computing. And so that's a truism coming from an algorithm guy, I can tell you. So this one right here is, and I'm not quite sure, there goes, that I must have stopped the video. So this was shortly before we joined Ford. I don't know how familiar you guys are with truck parking and truck parking issues, but truckers in this country drive these long hauls all over the place on our freeways, and they have limitations on how long they can drive in a day. And so they have to pull over and sleep every once in a while, just like you and I have to pull over and take a rest, but they are legally mandated to go sleep. One of the issues is they're driving and they have to go pull off the road and take a rest, but there's no parking space for them. And so you'll go to those service areas, those rest stops, which I'm sure everybody on this call has been to, I-94, I-75, any of these places driven, there's rest stops. And you'll see all the trucks lined up and parked there. And sometimes you'll even see on off ramps and on ramps, like my lower left picture here, you'll see trucks parked along the edge of the ramp because they have to sleep and they can't find a place to park. So the notion of this project was, can we estimate the parking at the rest stops and transmit that information up the road so the truckers can know 50 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles ahead of time whether there's going to be a parking spot for them when they get there, so they're not like, past their meter and they're sleepy. And so what we ended up doing was developing the video analytics, and I show you this really goofy video on the lower right where we use simple monocular cameras on poles at the entries and exits of these rest stops so you can count the vehicles going in and out. And we were differentiating between truck and car because we didn't want to count the cars. Obviously, it's not like truck parking. So count the number of trucks going in, count the number of trucks going out. You knew roughly how many truck parking spaces were taken up, and you could use that to feed the signs. And so we developed this for a big traffic engineering firm and for the federal government, and they deployed it along 94 and a few other places. And we turned the technology over to them right about when we joined Ford because we had to step back from some of those programs. So kind of a neat thing, not super sophisticated, but like a good application, right? And that's what these things are supposed to be. It's like, you can take love in the fact that you're working on, let's say, really hard autonomy problems, and that's great. Sometimes the problems are tricky, but not quite as hard as that, but they have really good applications, and you really need to be able to draw satisfaction from a solution well done. And that's kind of a neat thing. Now, this one, I think you guys are really going to dig on. And now I can live to tell the tale because this was a big government project back in the day. We were called in by the US government to look at what we could do in terms of cold weather autonomous security robots. So you've got military bases all over the world in all sorts of environments, super hot, super cold, whatever, and they've got to protect themselves, right? I mean, there's like a fence line and there's guards and all that kind of stuff. And people, for better or worse, for various reasons, will try to penetrate those fence lines. And sometimes it won't even be just people, it'll be animals and stuff, right? So a deer will go through a fence line or whatever, and they can have sensors and they can have guards and things. But sometimes, the place is important enough where you can't just simply say, oh, I think that was a fox and let it go. You have to check out what's really happening along that fence line. You can't assume that it's nothing. And in this case, they had a cold weather set of bases where they wanted to protect it, but they didn't want to have to send these guys out like 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the temperature is like 40 degrees, and there's something along the fence line and you can't see it. Sure, send out some guys in a Jeep. They'll check it out. It's fine. They'll be there in a couple minutes. It's good. Now let's talk about 3 a.m. and let's talk about when it's negative 40 degrees outside. And let's talk about when there's heavy snow. These guys don't want to go out. They don't want to put on their heavy coats. It's very fatiguing to them if they're doing it hour after hour after hour. Think about if you're getting up every hour all night long to go look out at your front door to see if something was there. It's a debacle. It's a disaster. So instead of that, what they wanted was robots. And they wanted robots where when there was a detection along a fence line, they could autonomously deploy these robots to go check it out and not necessarily make any decisions, but to allow the people back at home base to look through the eyes and ears of that robot and check out what's happening. And if they got to talk to someone there, or they have to say, hey, Fox, go away, or, they have to do whatever, then they can figure out whether they want to send human beings out or not. And so my team actually built this entire project, all the software, all the hardware, all the algorithms. We built it on a Polaris, you can see down the lower left, a Polaris UTV platform. And we built this whole system up and we deployed it at this cold weather military base, and it worked down to negative 40 degrees like a charm. And it was a really great project. But, we were told, and this is just a lesson to all you guys, we were told on and on, not by our direct customers, because they knew who we were and what we could do, but we were told by all sorts of other contractors and other people in the military, like, yeah, you guys can never do that project yourself. Like, why is that? They're like, well, you're only 50 people. Like, yeah, but we're really, really good and we do things like this. So like, yeah, no, you need a really big company to help you do this. And the point is, you don't need a really big company and you don't need thousands of people. What you need is a small core of the right people and the right capabilities and the right resources. So never write yourself off or write yourself down because, it's two of you in an apartment. Two guys in an apartment have started world-changing things, Hewlett Packard, Google, all these things. And so, when people tell you no, don't always take no for an answer. So that's just some unsolicited advice there. So this one, I don't know if the video is going to play here or not. Video doesn't want to play for us, but this one, sorry about the video. I mentioned a couple times modeling and simulation. So if you guys are into autonomous robots or any sort of things, engineering in general, that simulation is super important, right? Because it's expensive and hard to build things, and then to test them is really hard and expensive. And so generally you want simulated environments and simulated devices so you can figure out how your code is doing before you actually drop it on a real thing in the real world. And so this particular piece of software, Anvil, was something that we did for the US military. And it was kind of a fun thing. It integrated game engine technology as well as kind of engineering simulation. And so you could build a virtual version of your robot, attach virtual sensors, put it in a virtual environment that you've designed, and be able to attach your autonomy code and have it run around and do things and see, is it going to run into a wall? Is it going to get around that obstacle? And on and on and on. Is it going to get stuck in a hole? And so this piece of software we started back in 2007 with the Army, which is pretty early on for all this stuff. And we developed it and developed it and developed it until finally we had 3 different versions. We had hundreds of customers who were using this thing, and on and on and on. It actually lives on to this day in the US Army. It's used in all sorts of robotics projects. It's an off-road robotics simulation package. At Ford, we actually took this with us as well. So we use it internally, sometimes for autonomous vehicle development, but generally we're working on-road. And so there's other tools that are more common for on-road things. And so sometimes we use Anvil, sometimes not, but it's kind of the hybrid of video games and engineering simulation to put together a really nice tool that you can do a lot with. And so, simulation in any of these things is super important. Now, going to Ford, you guys probably say, well, it sounds very exciting, Mitch. You're doing military robots, you're doing military robot simulation, you're doing vehicle tracking, face tracking. How do you get into Ford? Like, how does that even happen? Well, and in fact, if you Google quantum signal AI and Ford, you'll see a whole spate of articles worldwide for when we got bought back in 2019 with all sorts of questions from analysts and comments about how, why would Ford buy a defense contractor? Oh, that's the best idea they ever had, or, oh, that's a really dumb idea. And so everybody's like, we were mysterious, which was good. It generated a lot of good press. But when you talk about Ford, like, they don't talk about, if you ever talk to anyone in the auto industry, it's not about cars anymore. It's about mobility. So no one's like, oh, we're a car maker. You talk about, we're in the business of providing transportation, of facilitating mobility for everyone and democratizing mobility. And so it's not about just, just selling cars. It's about getting people or stuff from here to there. And it doesn't matter whether it's a car, a truck, a bus, a shuttle, a plane, a scooter, whatever. The companies are into it. And they're really all about it. So these solutions will take a lot of different forms. I'll show you a slide here in a minute, but they need similar technologies. And you guys are smart guys, so things like software, hardware, robotics technology, algorithms. These are all the enablers for these and simulation. These are all the things that are enabling these autonomous solutions and these new forms of mobility. So from our perspective, it was a really smooth transition because working on autonomous bomb disposal robots or security robots that protect the base to transitioning to, robots that move around groceries or robots that move around people is a pretty darn, there's differences, but there's a lot of similarities. And so we were really excited and we could apply almost everything we learned. And the really nice thing about a bunch of goofballs like us that had done all these different projects joining Ford is that there's a lot of cross-pollination. So as you guys saw, I'm a biomedical engineer and electrical engineer, and I worked for all sorts of crazy projects and organizations as part of Quantum. We learned a lot everywhere we went. I learned a lot about forensics. I learned a lot about security. I learned a lot about law enforcement. I learned a lot about manufacturing, all these things. And bringing all that craziness to the table at Ford is a lot of things that my colleagues haven't experienced. And so if you're, let's say right now, you're a software engineer that has only worked in one area, that certainly doesn't mean that you can't cross over to lots of other areas, as you can imagine, because your experience in one area, not just in software, but in what you're doing there, has application in other places. And it's a valuable asset to your employers. And so it's kind of just something to think about on that. I said transportation is changing, and I'm not bullshitting you guys. Like I'm in as many meetings about crazy forms of transportation as I am about cars. And so you look at things like these, like, little electric vehicles on the upper left, crazy new e-bikes, like I said, these shuttles, even hover bikes and delivery vehicles of all kinds. I mean, these are the meetings that I'm in all day long. And this is Ford Motor Company. Ford is over 100 years old, and it started with the Model T, and it put the world on wheels with cars. So if a company that old that was that focused on cars can start talking about and working on and pursuing things like this, the world is truly changing. I grew up in the auto industry because my parents were both auto industry people. My father worked at GM, my mother at Ford. I grew up around Detroit. You know, 30 years ago, I said to him, and I have no problem saying this on a recorded camera here. It's like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, I'd be like, I would never work for an auto company. It'd be like, I had no interest. I worked as an intern. I'm like, yep, no, that's enough. I got it from my parents. I got that internship. I think I'll do something else. Nowadays, it's a totally different bag, and the companies are changing rapidly, and they have different goals and different interests and different needs. And so you can't write off any of these guys as old school companies that don't know how to adapt or whatever. They are adapting, and they are pursuing some really interesting technology. And one of the things, and I promise this talk doesn't go on forever and ever, but I figured there's some fun stuff for you guys. So one of the things that's fun here is I'm showing this video, hopefully you can see it. We've been working on this autonomous food delivery system in downtown Detroit and the Hubbard Richard neighborhood there over by Corktown. And the notion is that we're taking groceries from one location at what's called the Ford Resource Engineer and Engagement Center, which is a place where Gleaners kind of does some collaboration with, and moving the groceries from there over to the Rio Vista apartment complex, which is kind of an assisted living. And so we're getting fresh groceries over to seniors that have a hard time getting out to get them themselves. Now, of course, yeah, you could have a human being drive this stuff over in a truck or a shuttle. That has happened all the time for a long time. But in using this as kind of a development project, not only do the groceries get over there, and it frees up resources for the Freck people, the Gleaners people, to be able to deliver and do other things around the city instead of having to deliver these groceries. It also allows us to get a better understanding of what's it like to operate an autonomous shuttle. What are the bad parts? What are the good parts? What about when people come to unload the groceries? Do they like, touching the thing? How can they come near it? Do they get scared when they come near it? How do we communicate that the vehicle is safe to come near? And so there's all these kind of crazy things that go along with that you don't really think about when you think about autonomous vehicles. You just think about, oh yeah, make it drive itself. Well, it's more than just making it drive itself. And so this has been something that my company's been focusing on with some other partners at Ford for the last year and a half, 2 years, and it's just going to keep getting better and expanding. And so kind of a neat thing. So, every once in a while, if you're down in that area, you might see one of these shuttles running around, but it's so efficient in what it does. We don't have to do a lot of it each month. It's only a few times a month right now because it just does what it needs to do, and it does it really, really well. So before I close, I thought I would give you some advice because I used to be in your shoes. I used to go to a lot of talks where guys just went blah, 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 blah about Intel and Microsoft and how great the company was. And at the end, I was just kind of like, okay, well, yeah, Intel's great. I didn't know what to take away from it. And so I always like to give talks, particularly students or people at universities where, there's some actionable intelligence that goes with the talk. So, I think that number one is you guys are there getting your degrees, participating in the academic environment. I think that's a great start. Anything that you guys can do to learn more about your field, computing, engineering, science, physics, technology, these are things or things that are related to that. These are things that help you build a great career in things like autonomous vehicles or transportation or any mobility, any of these kind of things associated. You have a very bright future. So it's happy for me to be able to talk to you guys. If you want to get into the autonomous vehicle industry, and I get asked that a lot in places I go, there's a few things that I can recommend. One is obviously have like a science, technology, engineering, math type of background, engineering, math, computer science, software development, physics, anything that helps support these things is really, really useful. Now there's other folks that we work with too. I mean, I've got civil engineers, I've got digital artists, I've got I've got a user UI, UX people. I've got all sorts of folks working on these things. And so, if you got something to contribute, we can use you. But I know STEM background stuff makes a huge difference in getting your foot in the door. If you're interested in hardware or software, algorithms or math, these are all key elements to these things and things that people are looking for. And trust me, people are dying for staff right now. We're all dying for staff because we've got more challenges that we can address with our current staff. And so you guys are in a catbird seat in terms of getting jobs, which is a beautiful thing. Not all graduating classes or folks in universities were in that position over the years. You'd have entire classes where very few people get job offers. Nowadays, everybody's getting job offers. And if you're not, you should talk to me and I'll give you a hand. But you should get experience wherever and whenever you can, whether it be internships or side jobs or whatever, even home independent projects. If you can work on open source projects or you're building your stuff in your lab. I mean, I get resumes all the time, and sometimes or some years it was hard for them to get internships or find, that folks couldn't get an internship because they're busy actually working a job that paid them quite a bit, that is supporting them to go through school. And I totally get that and appreciate that. But in the same time, they were also on the weekends hacking, weeknights, they were hacking on their computer at home, doing some development work on a project, a pet project that they liked. And that is just as valuable as doing an internship. So, if you don't have the time or you can't get the right internship, try to build some stuff on your own. That goes a long way with employers. Broader advice beyond just getting into the industry. I just tell you guys honestly, straight up, as a dude who, went from high school to college, went from college to starting a company with without really knowing much about it. And now, fairly did it successfully. I'm still in the same place 22 years later. Is you should always pursue your dreams and ignore the naysayers. And I think I made that point earlier. People will tell you no all over the place. There's a lot of people that will tell you yes, that don't even care, that are just like, yeah, go for it. Good. But there's also a lot of people, including well-minded people, that will tell you no. And I had one tell me no at a point and early on in our company, and I almost listened to her, and thankfully I didn't listen to her, and things turned out just well. But you should really pursue your dreams, because particularly when you're younger, you've got the opportunity to do so. I say find your people. Everybody's got a clique and a gang they hang out with, right? Like your best friend, your best friend's buddy, your girlfriend's friends, and whatever, your boyfriend's friends. You hang out with these people, you know who they are, the smart folks, the interested folks. Find the folks that are common to you that you would like to work with, and that you wouldn't mind going into a group project with, because effectively, if you start a company, it's like a group project. And so you need to find the right people to be in with. I say work hard, make your mark. There are a lot of engineers and science types that will graduate and take jobs at big companies and small companies too. And they'll kind of go through the motions in their jobs and wonder when things are going to happen. And 25, 30 years later, they really haven't moved anywhere. They're just kind of like at the same job and nothing's going on. You should take the time to burn the candle, particularly when you're younger, burn the candle at both ends, use every skill you have and make your mark. Work really, really hard. I tell people, I'm like, I am not the smartest guy I ever met by a long shot. I know lots and lots and lots of smarter guys, but I worked pretty damn hard to get where I am. And it was really, and that's what, how I think I was able to make it. Little smarts, a lot of hard work, and a little bit of luck, and you can do pretty well. I say never chase the highest paycheck. Guys, gals, I mean, I can't stress this enough. Do not spend the early days of your career just choosing your jobs based on which one's going to pay you the most. That is a mistake that you will regret your entire life, because you will pass on good opportunities that have tremendous upside and satisfaction for you personally, because the other guy offered you $5,000. I know companies that have horrible jobs that will suck the life out of you like death itself, that will pay you $30,000 more than a good job that you will like, and you will grow, and you'll be thankful for the rest of your life. So don't, and you know why they pay so much? Because no one wants to take the job, and no one wants to be there. And so, find something that looks like the right opportunity and go for it, and do not chase the highest paycheck. I promise you that is good advice. And then the last 2 points I had was, success means a lot, many things to many people. You cannot compare yourself. There's a disease, and I joke about it. It's like a disease around the show Friends. And I think in the 90s, you guys have seen Friends. Yeah, this is I'm so old. So it's like a 90s sitcom where you've got a bunch of people that are barely employed living in this probably $3 million apartment in New York. And they sit around all day and they drink coffee in a fancy shop and they kiss each other and these sorts of things, and hilarity ensues. And but the truth is that folks will go to New York looking for that lifestyle, and they'll find their job, and they'll find that, yeah, they don't get to live in an apartment that looks like that. And they don't get to hang out with their friends all day long drinking coffee, because they got to work, and they actually have to, get by, and they have to do food shopping and all the real world stuff. And so the unrealistic expectations that have been set up by the media, and I'm not demonizing the media at all, because I love media, by the media and by our society and things like this. You start a company, don't think that it has to be Google 3 weeks later to be successful. I know plenty of companies that have done tremendous success over many years, and they're very, very happy, that never became huge, that stayed small, that stayed 20 people. And I remember being told this point by someone 20 years ago when we were 3 people. They said, hey, I'm really proud that we're just still here and we're 12 people and we're doing good projects and it's all good. And I thought to myself, geez, that seems really depressing. That seems like, wow, they don't have a very big vision and things like that and all stuff. But the truth is that they understood what success looked like for them and they appreciated it. And I think that they were more mature than I was at the time. And now that I'm 22 years into this, I know that I've employed hundreds of people, given them super great jobs and at great, great wages. I've given insurance for their families. We've worked on great projects. We've produced all sorts of things. It's been a massive success. Even before Ford bought us, it was a massive success. And so I'm super proud of Quantum Signal AI. And then and you should be proud of anything that you do too. The last point I would say is just always have fun. I mean, guys, I can't tell you how much fun I have every day. I work around people that are way smarter than me, that are working on hard projects. I'm the dumb guy in the entire operation, and I love it. It is fantastic. I come in the morning, I get my coffee. I spend sometimes 10, 12, well, in the old days, I used to spend even more hours here a day because I just love being around it. I love working on it. I love seeing happy customers and all this stuff. I'm not saying that I ignore my family. I spend plenty of time with my family, trust me, but my other family here at the office is a fantastic one. And I think that if you guys find a way to have fun in your job, you will never be unhappy. You will never dread coming in. I never dread coming in the morning, even on the shittiest days. I never dread coming in because I know there's going to be a hot cup of coffee and a lot of smart people and a lot of challenges for the day. And so it's just a great thing. So find your niche and have fun. And that's really the last point I wanted to make. But I know that that's a lot of talking. I'm super happy to answer questions. If you guys are looking for positions, you're looking to get hired, we are always hiring. You see there the website. And if you submit your stuff there and you say, hey, I listened to Mitch, or Mitch sent me, that may even get you a cup of coffee and an extra $1 there. I don't know. But that was really all I had to share. I don't know if you guys have questions or comments or that sucked or whatever. You can tell me anything. You can't hurt my feelings. So
that was great. Thank you so much. Seriously.
Totally welcome.
You were the exact opposite of sucking. Like, that was awesome.
I'm going to tell it to my kids when I get home. She said I'm the exact opposite. It's like, they're like, oh no, Dad, you suck. So
I was gonna say, I did get a lot of your references because I was born in '93, so I'm like kind of one of the older ones here. Yeah, do you guys like have internships? And I guess how does that work? Do you expect people to like kind of know some of the stuff, or do you teach them? Like, how does that work?
We take interns of all different types. And in fact, we have had interns starting in high school. So that gives you an idea. I mean, really it's about knowing a little bit and having a lot of enthusiasm and having what we would judge to be some potential. And so we do have internships. They are pretty competitive. Like, I know last year when we opened up like 5 slots, we got like 1,000 applications, which is kind of a steep hill to climb. I mean, if I had applied personally, I probably wouldn't have made it. So, which is I guess that's a good thing, sort of. I don't know, but pardon me. If you guys are interested, you can always apply. Even if you see stuff on our website that's like, hey, you see the job stuff and you don't like, and you don't like what's there, or you think you could bring something else to the table because you see what we're like. There's a thing about like, I don't fit in any of these, but I'm still interested. You send in your stuff, because we have had people that totally would have never fit the mold in any of the things that we had posted. And yet when we met them, we're like, oh shit, yeah, we need to hire this person. This is like a person that needs to be on our team, and we'll make positions for folks. And so if you're enthusiastic about working at our place, cool, definitely apply. If not, if you're interested in, like, for instance, if you're interested in Ford, I can also connect you with some of the Ford folks, because obviously I know all the Ford recruiters and all that other stuff, and they always have tons of openings. I mean, they're massive corporations. So anything we can do to connect you guys up is good. I'll tell you our interview process, and this is a funny thing. This is another bit of advice. When you go to a company and the interview process sucks, you should beware, because it means that they don't do a good job filtering their people, and you will be working with a bunch of goofballs. And so we spend a tremendous amount of time filtering stuff. So there's a resume, and then there's a questionnaire, and there's a phone screen, and then there's an on-site visit where you do like a half day of work with it, and you meet the team, and you eat lunch, and you present something. And so we are very solid about our process and screening people really heavily, because we want to get people that are the right match. Sometimes people are super smart and would be good, but they're not the right match. Like what they want is not what we are offering or what we can give to them. And the last thing I want to do is bring you in and say to you, hey, Joe, like you look like a smart guy. And you're like, hey, I'm here to program autonomous vehicles. And I say, yeah, we don't really have any positions in that, but but maybe we can make one. And all of a sudden it becomes, no, we have you drawing, we have you writing code for a database somewhere. It's like, I don't want to bait and switch. I want to match your interests and wants with what we have. And you should look for that when you look for jobs, is make sure what you want to do is what they're going to hook you up with, because the bait and switch is common in a lot of places, and that can be pretty shitty after a while. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it answered a lot. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I think that was a great presentation, and especially on what you just said about answering Kelly's question. I think a lot of people get really intimidated about applying to different companies and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, this job I got this offer. And then they want to just jump on it right away. And I see some of my friends kind of go for that. I'm like, you got to know your own value and your own worth and see where you are best and who is best for you.
No, absolutely. And I, on the flip side, I will say, I see people, and this is good advice to you guys that are going out in the job market. I also see people that play the game too hard, where they look at some jobs, they apply to 3 or 4 jobs, they go through the whole interviews, they get like 2 offers or whatever, 3 offers, and they look at it and like, well, I don't know, I'm going to hold out for a while and stuff. If you see one that you're truly in love with and you think is good, you should, and they make you an offer, you should go for it, because like the grass will always feel like there might be greener grass on the other side. I mean, I've had folks that we actually made offers to that have turned us down, and then 3 weeks later come back and said, is that offer still good? And you do not want to be that person, because it's not that like we would, humiliate that person or do something bad or whatever. And we would definitely reconsider them. But it's like, it's revealing of a process, a thought process that says we weren't good enough as an employer, or we were second choice or whatever. We actually had a guy, and this is a true story. We had a guy that on his first day at the company, we took him out to lunch, including with me, the CEO. And he admitted during the lunch that, yeah, he was waiting on another company really to give him this offer, but they basically passed on him. So we were his second choice, but he needed a job, so he took it anyway. And I'm just like, dude. And after the lunch, my CTO, who was there too, he came in and we were just laughing. We're like, he does not have a good survival instinct. He is not, this is a person that you do not want to leave near bridges or dangerous animals or anything, because he will put his arm in that cage and just ask for it. And so, be sure that you're honest with yourself, and be sure you're honest with your employers, and you can't go wrong. It's really hard to go wrong. I mean, if you're honest, the employer hopefully should be. And if they aren't, then that's the time that you can move on. And so I think that, there are so many opportunities for you guys nowadays. It is unbelievably a job seekers market, much more than it is a company, from the other side. And so you guys have your whole future ahead of you and all sorts of opportunity. Find something that looks good, go with it. If it doesn't work out, then you can go a different direction. But there's you've got a tremendous amount of opportunity. And I think the employers are listening too, by the way. I think that they see that flexibility is important. I think that they see that people want to be valued properly. I think that they see that good benefits are important. I think that they see meaningful work is important, and if they don't, they're not going to keep smart people. And so, we've always been people focused, because I started the company because I want to be around people that I like to be with and I can learn from. And we want to create an environment that was for smart folks to thrive. And that's what we did. And so that's the kind of environment you're looking for, a place where you can thrive and grow. And so anyway, that was a long-winded response to a very short question or comment. So
no, thank you so much.
I talk too much.
Were you saying all the right things? So it's totally
Oh,
fine.
that's good.
Yeah. It looks like Meji in the chat, she asked what your beginner internships are like, and do you need experience for them?
You don't, I wouldn't say that you ever need experience for anything. Like I said, we've taken high school kids, and and so if you've done some, good working class, if you've got some, personal experience, or you've got some, you're really motivated, send it in. A good cover letter can help. I was once in your shoes, right? I mean, my resume was what it was. I had a couple internships and that was about it. Or, the first time I applied when I was 18 for an internship, I had nothing. I mean, I had, my awards from high school or whatever. Like no one gives a shit about that. It's like, so, you know, it's they've got to see within you and your resume and stuff that there's potential and that there's intelligence and that there's interest. And, you know, attitude and motivation and interest go a long, long way, because I can take really, really smart guys that have a bad attitude and I don't have any use for them because they will never be valuable to me. They will never generate anything that will cause problems in my team. I can take people that have, you know, that are enthusiastic and inexperienced, but smart, and I can teach them all sorts of things and have them working on stuff. Half the people at this company, the senior people that are here now, were fairly young and I'm going to say young and naive. They were fairly ripe off the turnip truck when they got here, and they learned over many projects how to do their thing, and we all grow and learn together. And so, yeah, so no, there doesn't need to be experience to be interns here. It's just, you know, it's more about what classes have you had, whether you're a good fit for that, et cetera, et cetera. And every year we take, I don't know, like 5 or 6 interns. We'll also take interns between, like, not just during the summer, but if you're looking for doing a co-op or a part-time or things like that, we're flexible. I mean, we're part of Ford now, but we have independence where we can do things that big companies can't. So if you're like, hey, I would love to get an internship, I've got a light semester in the fall and I want to do something, you can send in your resume to our website and say, hey, I'm interested. And a lot of places would do that too. So it's not just us. So does that answer your question, or?
Meji, does that answer?
Yeah, yes, it does. Thank you.
Cool. Anything else I can tell you guys? Ask me anything.
This was actually a wonderful presentation. I did because
Thank
it
you.
gave me like robotics vibes, because I used to be a part of a robotics team, and
Nice.
it feels like you know, you come to work and you have like a problem to solve, something similar to that robotics team. I'm sure you're familiar with FRC, right?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was a part of a FRC robotics team, and this gives me that robotics vibe completely.
Yep. I mean,
Yeah.
it's doing, and I did all sorts of that kind of stuff when I was in high school. It was like all in college too, like robotics projects as teams, you know, building little robots to do this and that. We did walking robots. We did rolling robots. And these are all good experiences, and it teaches you to work as a team, and it teaches you about the technologies and all these kind of good things. And so there's a lot of our staff nowadays that have like worked on FIRST Robotics and have worked on various different programs like that, or SAE Formula Car, or any of these other things. And those are all good ways to cut your teeth on stuff. We've also had people, like I said, that just like worked on open source projects and stuff at home that were just like hackers. And, you know, we love that too. I mean, that's kind of that's the way you learn stuff, right? So
I loved it. Thank you for the presentation.
you're welcome. Thank you. Zvar, anything I can answer for you? Totally gone. I guess not. Awesome. Well, you guys have my contact information here. Actually, I want to tell you one more story because it's fun. That if you guys have got a minute. I was talking about how someone had discouraged us early on, and this is something that, and this is like one of those stories that I kind of like. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are days here when things are dark and it's painful and you're like, okay, this is, you know, this demo didn't work, we really got to get on it, we got to really motivate us, you know, there not everything is perfect, I don't want to sell that or whatever, but you know, that when those days are bad, you think back on successes, right? And I think back on this story. When I was early on in the company, we had I was telling you about biometrics. We were working on biometrics algorithms for a client out of Chicago, and we were like, the contracts were like $20,000, $23,000, whatever. And we're doing good work, and we were doing way more than $20,000 worth of work for $20,000. And we went to get paid for like 4 months worth of work, and the company just didn't pay us, and they went out of business. They just disappeared. And so when you're not getting a paycheck, it's kind of hard. And when they disappeared, we kind of looked at each other. We're like, okay, well, these biometrics algorithms that we're working on, that these guys didn't pay us for, you know, what are we going to do with our direction, our research direction? I mean, this is good work. We should do something with it. And so we had scheduled to go to a biometrics conference to pitch what we were doing, and to see if we could get somebody interested in it. And this was like right around of the summer of 2001. And then on September 11th, I was actually on the way to the airport to go to a biometrics conference to pitch our stuff. And then all the badness happened, and we had to turn around, and then we're like, well, what are we going to do? The economy is going to be a problem. Everything's going to be a problem. Like, we couldn't get to our thing, but we knew that biometrics might be a better thing, and that people might be interested for security purpose or whatever. And so about 6 months later, they rescheduled this conference, and we went to the conference, and we ran into some government people and we told them our story. And they said, and they were from the National Institute of Science and Technology, and a NIST, if you've heard of this. So the NIST people looked at us and said, we really like what you guys are talking about. Why don't you apply for this one program? And we're like, okay, every time we apply for government grants, it seems like we get turned down, because I had written like 4 grants and everything had been turned down. And so we went and we heard them, and so they said, you should apply. So we applied, and we went through the first round, and we didn't really expect to get anywhere, and we got through the first round, and it was a super competitive program. And then we got to the second round, and this is like for like $2 million. We got to the second round, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to the second round. And then between the second and third round, someone from the University of Michigan, who shall remain nameless, who's a friend of mine subsequently, came over and asked how our company was doing. I said, well, it's not very good right now. We don't have a lot of clients, and we had a client stiff us on money, but we've got an opportunity for this one big grant, and that's like about $2 million. And that's one of our big prospects right now. And the person kind of laughed at me, like literally laughed at me across the conference table, and said, don't you know, this particular grant program, all the big companies get it. A company like your size will never get it. Never going to happen. She's like, so you better put your eggs in a different basket. I'm like, okay, that's depressing, but okay. And so I left kind of deflated. And then later I said to myself, okay, we're through the second round though. We're not going to stop until they reject us, right? So we get to the third round, like, holy crap, third round, we're almost there. It's like 4 rounds, this thing. And they call us to Washington, D.C. And we sit in front of this room, and we talk about our project, and this is a pretty good sign that things are good. And I don't bore you with that part of the story, but we go home, and about 3-4 weeks later, I'm sitting out in the field clearing weeds with my father by his chicken coop. And he said, well, how's it going, son? And I said, this is like September of 2002. I said, Dad, I don't know about this company thing. I've been going at this now for 2-3 years, and we have almost no prospects, and I can't sell this thing, and it's really tough, and I don't get paychecks, and I can't look at my wife over and over and just tell her, this company is going to go somewhere and spend another 5 years of my life. And he's like, I understand. I said, like, listen, man, we're drinking beer. I said, if I don't get this grant, we're probably gonna kill the company, because it's not worth it anymore. I just got to I got to go get paid somewhere and get a real job, and or start a different company. And so he's like, yeah, I hear you, son. It's all good. So as I left that day, and I was filthy, I remember I was really dirty. I'm driving in my car. And if I know you guys are much younger than I am, those days having a cell phone was kind of more of a luxury thing. It wasn't like there were a lot fewer cell phones in those days, and there certainly weren't smartphones. So I had this like cheap cell phone that I had gotten, Sprint cell phone, and I was pulling away and going home in my 85 Chevy Cavalier, and I got the call from the government, and they said, we just want to let you know that you got the award, and we'll be following up with that stuff. I was just like, literally, I just been talking about it 5 minutes before, and I'm like, you're kidding, right? And they're like, nope, you got it. And I got off the phone, and I had to pull over because I was so excited, right? Because it was the first government grant we got. It was the first time anyone ever gave us any real money, and to get it to go. So it was really, really good. And then finally, I was like super excited about this whole deal. And flash forward about a year. So we started the grants, we did all stuff. Flash forward about a year, we sat down with our project managers who come in from DC for a review. They want to know what we did with their money. And we went out to dinner here in Ann Arbor, and I looked at them across the table. I said, let me tell you a story. And I told them the story I just told you guys about the person coming over to talk to me about, that you guys will never get this grant and all this stuff. I said, she's told me that big companies get it. Company like us would never get it. No one would ever take a chance on us and all this other stuff. And the managers just smiled. And they said, and they said to me, who told her that? That's totally wrong. And I'm like, how wrong is it? They're like 85% of what we give is to small companies and startups like you guys. And I'm like, whoa, that's a pretty big difference from what I heard. And she's like, yeah, and just for the record, so out of 650 applications, you guys were ranked number 1. And I'm like, I like kind of looked at my partner and I'm like, did I hear you right? I'm like, she's like, yeah, out of 650 applications, you guys were number 1. And I'm like, that's unbelievable. And so when I think back on the times when people told me no, and I think back on the times when, I wanted to close up shop and things like that, just was pragmatic and held in there a little bit more and believed in myself and believed in my partners. And it all happened. And so, when you think about what you want to do with yourself and where your career path is going, you guys should absolutely look inside yourselves and say, do you have it in you? Are you ready to do this? Are you ready to believe in yourself? Because that's what it takes. And, when these people come to you and say, it's never going to happen, blah, 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 blah. It sounds like a cliche, but I'm telling you, there's going to be a dozen people lined up to tell you no, and you're going to have to go through 100 people tell you no until you get to the one person that really tells you yes. But when you hit the right person, it all works out just fine. And so, so if when I have a bad day here at Quantum, I remember stories like that and the times that we delivered great technology and the times that we made our customers super duper happy and everything goes great. And so, so you should never, let the shit get you down, if that, so to speak. So not the most eloquent way to say it, but there you go. So I figured I'd share that story.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Seriously.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you reached out to me because I never thought about, I guess, I have like thought about robotics, but I guess I never thought about like all the different things you can do with it. Like that you mentioned, it's really cool to see.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I will, unless anyone has another question, I will let you guys do the rest of your meeting. That's all I had to say. And if you guys ever want to reach out to me for advice or job stuff, or whatever, all my contact information is right there. Okay, guys?
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
No worries. Thank you. You guys have a good evening.
You
Thank
too.
you. You too.
All right, let's see if I can figure this out as a technologist. There we go. All right, I'll let you guys do your thing. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So that was great. My light's like not on. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite ones that we've done this semester.
I feel like it's gonna be really hard to follow that.
Come on, man, let's see what you got. You guys got to end this off right.
It's not gonna be as good, I promise that. But I know I feel motivated like a lot. It's nice to see someone that you'd like want to work for. 'Cause I know I've had pretty bad bosses. I don't know about you guys. Let me share my screen. 1 second. I have too many windows open. Okay, so this is our general meeting. Obviously, we just had our guest speaker from Quantum Signal AI. And we were just going to go over the hackathon results. I know a lot of you guys were in it, but maybe for anyone watching that didn't check it out, we had the best hack went to Abe Mused. He built something called Address Oracle, and pretty much what it was is, you know how you like move a lot and you get mailed to different addresses? This one just keeps track of where you are, and they would use a code to find like where you're at right now. That's the best way to describe it, right, Mohammed?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was really cool, and it was like pretty much functional. Mezwar and Kylie got second place. With, do you want to explain what your app was?
Yeah, so our app was called Muse, and it is a mobile app that is used. I'm confusing it with our software engineering project, but if I remember correctly, it actually come back to me. I keep confusing it. You know what it is? I believe
was it live one where you sit in a room and you listen to music together or something?
Yeah, it's essentially a social music app where you can essentially create music spaces and allow other users to like join in, create rooms, and listen to music with other people. Kind of like a mobile DJ session kind of thing. So yeah, just connecting people through music spaces. That's what it is.
Yeah. And it was cool. Oh, by the way, first place got an Oculus Rift. Second place got 3D printers. and everyone's gonna be picking them up on Saturday, I believe. Third place, Zavar got third place. Zavar, do you want to explain what yours was?
Yeah. So pretty much what I made is like I had this this like keyboard, this USB keyboard, and it's like a bunch of like keyboard shortcuts that you can like map. And since there's like 128 keys on a keyboard, you pretty much like have like endless like capabilities. Like if you press one button, you can open a website. You press another one, you can open a folder. So that's pretty much what that is. It's just like a macro thing.
Yeah, and it makes me want to make one for myself too. But actually, we had a tie for third place. Zavar tied with Team Aperture, and what they made, because the theme was life at home, was it kept track of the expiration dates of the food in your fridge. So it would tell you if you were good, if it was on the way to being bad, and then if it was just expired. So a couple things. I know Sandra mentioned this to me and Mazwar. The career fair is next week. I believe Wednesday is the all majors one, and there is companies there that are like looking for computer science students. And our engineering career fair is on Friday, the 25th. And I know a lot of it seemed like civil engineering, but I know last time when I went, they added a ton of sessions the day of. So just make sure you look out for that. Try to find an internship, a co-op. If you haven't signed up already, go to Handshake and do that. Yes. Was there anything else that Sandra needed to tell us? I think that was it, right?
We have the Poke during the career fair.
Yes, that's it's coming up. I just wanted to just give a little shout out to the career fair. But yeah, upcoming events. Mohammed has his workshop this Friday. Do you want to give like a little spiel?
Yeah, so for the Swift workshop, it's gonna be this Friday at 4 p.m. It's gonna be for Mac users only, and you have to have Xcode installed. If you have a PC and you really want to join, you're gonna have to figure out how to get that working. It's a very messy process, but it is doable. But you're gonna have to do that on your own. We're gonna be learning how to code a calculator. A very simple application, but it's kind of a good segue into learning the basics of Swift and the Swift UI or Xcode UI. It's really fun. It's really cool. If you guys haven't done app development in that kind of environment, I highly suggest it. It's really interesting, and it's you get a new way to look at code. So yeah, come through on Friday and you'll learn how to make an app.
I'm excited. I need to download Xcode again. Make some space for it. So yeah, next week is Engineering's week. We have 3 events going on next week on top of the career fair, which you should all go to. Monday is our Poke fundraiser. It's all day. You can bring your friends. 20% of their proceeds are going to go to us. I put all the QR codes to sign up if you haven't yet, if you want the calendar invite in your phone, because I know if I don't have it, I won't remember. But yeah, mention Society of Computer Developers when you order your food. Make sure you do that or we will not get the profit. So please do that. And you can do it for dine-in and takeout, I believe. I don't think you can do it for carry-out or for delivery, but everything else you can do it. Wednesday, we have our pitcher fundraiser. We pretty much signed up the 11 to 11:30 slot and the 12:30 to 1 slot. We do have, I believe, 6 openings for the 11:30 to 12 and the 12 to 12:30 slot. So if you need a nice picture, you can see some examples. Please sign up. Some of the money goes to us and Tau Beta Pi, and you get a really nice picture for LinkedIn because I know I really need one. And then Friday is our web scraping workshop that Zavar is teaching. Zavar, do you want to go over that too?
Yeah, so this is gonna be awesome, guys. We're gonna be diving into like the fundamentals of like web crawling and web scraping and like pretty much how like Google works and how it aggregates data and like finds search results. We're gonna be building like a kind of like a fundamental version of it, and it'll be really interesting. It'll be using Python and some other very like handy libraries, and you're gonna learn a lot.
Thank you. But yeah, if you haven't signed up yet, scan the QR code, sign up through Get Involved, then get the reminder with the Zoom link. And then the last thing was, since Rocket Companies is now a partner with Wayne State, they wanted to start teaching workshops like to students, and Sandra connected me with the recruiter there. I don't know if you've probably met some of them at the career fair, but they're gonna do a computer science resume and interview workshop because Rachel who works for Rocket. She was a technical recruiter and a technical developer. So she knows what companies are looking for exactly. So she's going to teach you how to build the perfect resume and how to correctly interview for the job. And also the Zoom link, or sorry, the QR code is right there to scan if you haven't signed up for that yet. But yeah, that was pretty much it. It was not as easy to follow after that really good presentation. But did anyone have any questions or suggestions?
I actually did have a question. I know Ms. Rar mentioned, I think earlier this week, about people coming to Poke Poke together. And I am more than down to try to organize something for that if you guys are interested, to all get together and go out for lunch or dinner at Poke Poke. So yeah, if you guys are interested in trying to get that a little bit organized and get a group of people going, ping me in server chat and we can try to get something going.
I'm down. Yeah, that sounds good. I'm really hungry now after talking about it. But yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, if you guys need anything, just message us in the Discord server. Thank you for sticking around and dealing with the technical difficulties. I'm sorry about that. But I hope you guys have a really good night. And I'll see
Yo,
you.
Kelly, I have a question.
Yes.
So the career fair, who's going to be at the career fair? Do we have a list of companies?
I believe they're all on Handshake, but I know some of them don't. It depends on who uploads the sessions, because some of the sessions have already been uploaded, but I know some of them they don't put it on until the day of the event.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I know
Is
they're
Rocket Mortgage one of them?
yes.
All right, for sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think those sessions are on the website, but yeah, if you go to Handshake, you can find all of them. I think you just have to look under events.
Okay, okay, bet. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, does anyone else have any questions?
Sounds like we're all set.
Yes. Have a good night, guys.
Good night, everybody. Bye.
Yeah.